Wrong, I breathed. Every head in the penthouse snapped. The billionaire, the security, even Prescott, they all stared like I'd just slapped the table. Oops. Davies, the manager, looked ready to swallow his tie. They thought I was just waitressing, invisible, pouring water, refilling ice. They had no clue. Years ago, Prescott stole my life's work and got away with it. Now, he's sweating. The Sheikh's eyes narrowed. He's listening. He has no idea how my quiet kindness will change everything. This isn't about my ego. It's about survival. And maybe, just maybe, a little payback. That smug bastard. In a locked penthouse suite, a Sheikh billionaire presents an impossible puzzle worth $1,000 billion. His world-class experts are silent, and the only person in the room who knows the answer is the woman pouring their water. Dinah Jensen knew the sound of failure. It wasn't a loud explosion. It was the whisper, soft shush, of her rubber-soled shoes on the plush Axminster carpet of the Grand Corinthian Hotel. It was the polite, dismissive glance that slid right past her. It was the weight of a heavy silver tray digging into her shoulder, a physical reminder of the intellectual weight she was no longer allowed to carry. She was, by every definition, invisible. Her world was a 24-hour cycle of starched aprons, the acidic smell of industrial cleaning spray, and the faint, tantalizing aromas of food she would never eat. Siberian caviar, white truffle risotto, 50-year-old single malt. She was the peripheral vision of the wealthy. Her hands, which had once confidently diagrammed complex syntactical structures on a university whiteboard, were now chapped and red, expert only at folding napkins into perfect bishop mitres. Today was different. The air in the hotel wasn't just vibrating with its usual hum of quiet luxury. It was electric, strained. A high-stakes maximum security meeting was taking place in the hotel's most exclusive residence, the Sterling penthouse. Mr. Davies, the hotel's general manager, was a man perpetually vibrating with anxiety. He rounded on Dana in the service hallway, his face pale. "Jensen!" He clears throat, snapped, his voice a harsh whisper. "You are on the Sterling penthouse team. You and Paul, that's it. The client, Sheikh-colored Algil, has demanded minimal staff. Absolute discretion." Dana's blood chilled. The Sterling penthouse. That was a $10,000 a night fortress. "You are to be silent," Davis continued, adjusting his tie so tightly his eyes bulged. "You do not make eye contact unless spoken to. You anticipate their needs. Water refilled before it's half empty. Plates cleared the second they are pushed away. You are furniture, Jensen. Expensive, quiet furniture. Do you understand?" "Yes, Mr. Davies," Dana said, her voice the practiced monotone of the service industry. "This meeting," Davies stressed, leaning in, "is worth more than this entire hotel. Algil Global Holdings is negotiating a deal that could reshape the energy market. Do not mess this up." Dina nodded, her expression placid, but inside her stomach was a knot of cold dread. She wasn't afraid of the work. She was afraid of the people. People like this, the 1% of the 1%, were the ones who had destroyed her. She thought back, a flash of involuntary memory, the polished mahogany of the dissertation review board, the smug, sympathetic smile of her advisor, the cold, triumphant look in his eyes. Dr. Dinah Jensen. She had been a star, a prodigy in semiotics and classical linguistics. Her doctoral thesis on symbolic logic in ancient merchant codes was set to be published to rewrite the textbooks. And then he had stolen it. Gregory Prescott, a fellow academic, charming, ruthless, and pathologically jealous. He had taken her work, her research, her life's work, reframed it slightly, and published it under his own name. When she'd fought, he had painted her as a hysterical, obsessed junior researcher. He had friends in high places. She had a mountain of student debt. The university quietly dismissed her claim to avoid a scandal. She was academically blacklisted. Dr. Dinah Jensen died. And Dana, the waitress, buried in shame and debt, was born. She pushed the memory down, pressing the heel of her hand against the sudden, sharp pain in her temple. She was furniture. Furniture doesn't have a past. She loaded her silver tray in the service kitchen, sparkling water from a specific Norwegian spring, still water bottled at the source in Fiji, a crystal ice bucket. She balanced the tray, took a deep, steadying breath, and pushed through the service door to the private penthouse elevator. The elevator opened silently into the penthouse foyer. The air was thick with the scent of expensive cigars and even more expensive cologne. She could hear low, tense voices from the main salon. She followed Paul, the senior waiter, into the room. It was a boardroom, not a salon. A massive, custom-built oak table dominated the space. At its head sat Sheikh Khaled Oljam. He was younger than Dana had expected, perhaps in his late 30s, with an air of absolute, weary command. He wore a simple white tache-toi. On his wrist was a PC Philippe, a watch worth more than Dana's entire former salary. His dark eyes scanned a projected screen on the wall, his expression carved from granite. His team was a collection of men in 1,000 suits, all looking stressed, all staring at their own tablets. And then Dina saw him, clear's throat, sitting to the Sheikh's right, gesturing confidently at the screen, was Gregory Prescott. Dana's tray didn't just rattle, it swayed, a high-pitched metallic shiver. The ice in the crystal bucket chimed. Every head snapped to water. "Apologies, Your Excellency." Mr. Davies, who had apparently followed them up, whispered, rushing forward. "A junior error." Prescott looked up, annoyed by the interruption. His eyes, the same cold, assessing blue she remembered, swept over her. He saw her uniform, her tray, her bowed head, and he felt nothing. He saw nothing. He didn't recognize her at all. To the man who had stolen her soul, she was just the help. The woman bringing the water. A cold, sharp wave of something, not just anger, but a profound, icy calm, Claire's throat, settled over dear Vina. He had taken everything from her, and he didn't even have the decency to remember her face. "Get on with it," Prescott snapped, not at her, but at Davies. He then turned back to the Sheikh. "Your Excellency, as I was saying, the algorithm is clearly flawed." Dana moved forward on silent feet. She began to pour the water, her hand as steady as a surgeon's. She was furniture. But furniture, she realized, has one advantage. Furniture listens. Dana moved around the periphery of the room, a phantom in starched white. Her movements were economical, practiced, a fresh napkin here, a quiet removal of a coffee cup there. Prescott, in full flow, never gave her a second glance. He was performing, using the same articulate, charming cadence he had once used to flatter her work before he stole it. "Your Excellency," Prescott said, standing and pacing before the large projection screen. "The problem, as Prescott Strategic Solutions sees it, is that Mr. Shaw is a paranoid eccentric. This puzzle is a stalling tactic." Dina's eyes flickered to the screen. It was not a spreadsheet. It was not a term sheet. It was a block of text, 5 stanzas, written in dense, archaic English. It looked less like a business proposal and more like a lost piece of Chaucer. Sheikh Khaled al-Jamil rubbed the bridge of his nose. He looked profoundly unimpressed. "Mr. Prescott, I do not pay you for psychological profiles. I pay you to solve problems. Leland Shaw is the only person on Earth who has perfected the quantum encryption needed for my new sovereign data network. He refuses to sell. He will only partner, And he has sent me this poem as the final term of negotiation. My analysts are stumped. You are stumped. This is inefficient. But sir, one of the suited analysts from a Big Four accounting firm chimed in. We've run every known decryption algorithm. We've cross-referenced the text with commodities, markets, astrological charts, financial projections. It's meaningless. It is not meaningless. The Sheikh snapped, his voice suddenly sharp as a blade. Men like Shaw do nothing that is meaningless. He believes business is the final frontier of philosophy. He is testing me, and you are all failing. Prescott, seeing his opening, stepped back in. Your Excellency, let's re-examine the third stanza. Where the 6 rivers meet the salt, the desert blooms not with water, but with thought. This is clearly a supply chain metaphor. The 6 rivers are his 6 primary distribution hubs. The salt is the ocean freight. He's demanding we integrate our logistics networks before he shares the core technology. It's a power play. Dana, standing by the service bar, felt a familiar itch in the back of her brain. The Dr. Jensen part of her, the part she kept locked away, was stirring. 6 rivers. Not water, but thought. She looked at the text again. Prescott was wrong. He wasn't just wrong. He was insulting the intelligence of the author. He was trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, trying to force a poem to be a spreadsheet. And this line, Prescott continued, emboldened by the Sheikh's silence. The caravan seeks the oasis, but the wise man seeks the vessel. The vessel is clearly the transport, the intellectual property. He's telling us to secure the patent transfer. He wants us to name our price. It's a negotiation, plain and simple. He's just being poetic about it. Sheikh Khalid's expression darkened. That is the same answer you gave me 2 days ago, and it is the same answer my competitors at Binhart International gave him before he rejected their 9 billion offer. He is not asking for a price. He leaned forward, his Patek Philippe watch catching the light. Leland Shaw is a modern-day sphinx, and this is his riddle. I have 24 hours to solve it. Or he walks, and if he walks, my entire national infrastructure project collapses. The room plunged into a thick, terrified silence. These men, masters of the universe in their own right, were beaten. They were staring at a few lines of text that held the key to a $100 billion kingdom, and they didn't have the slightest idea where to find the door, let alone the key. Dana watched. She watched Prescott's confident mask begin to slip. He was sweating just slightly at his temples. He was out of his depth. This wasn't something he could steal, bully, or bluff his way through. It required actual insight. Her mind, starved for so long, began to race. It was a cascade. 6 rivers, not logistics. The 6 rivers of Hades. No, too dark. The 6 schools of classical Greek philosophy. Meet the salt of wisdom. Sal in Latin. The desert blooms not with water, but with thought. A library. A center for knowledge. The caravan seeks the oasis, temporary physical sustenance. The wise man seeks the vessel, not a ship. A vessel of knowledge, a container for the thought. It wasn't a metaphor for a supply chain. It was a blueprint for a foundation, a new modern house of wisdom. Leland Shaw wasn't asking for money or logistics. He was asking for a legacy. He was asking his partner to prove he was a philosopher king, not just a banker. Dana saw the entire answer laid out in her mind with the crystalline clarity of a mathematical proof. It was beautiful. It was elegant. And Gregory Prescott, the man who had called her work derivative, was butchering it. She felt a sudden terrifying impulse. It was the same impulse that made her challenge her tenure professor in her first year of grad school. It was the thrill of the solution. She looked at Prescott, his face slick with false confidence. She looked at the Sheikh, a man of genuine power being hamstrung by mediocrity, and she thought of her tiny, damp basement apartment. She thought of the $38 balance in her bank account. Furniture stays silent. Mr. Davis's voice echoed in her head. Furniture is invisible. She gripped her empty silver tray so tightly her knuckles turned white. She would say nothing. She would go back to the kitchen, polish the silver, and go home. But Prescott spoke again. "Your Excellency, perhaps the text is deliberately nonsensical. A final FU from a man who never intended to deal at all. I suggest we prepare a hostile takeover bid of his parent company." This suggestion, so crass, so utterly wrong, was the final push. It was like watching someone use a Stradivarius to hammer a nail. Dana took one small silent step away from the wall. Her heart was a drum against her ribs. She was terrified. But the part of her that was Dr. Dinah Jensen was more terrified of staying silent. She opened her mouth, her voice barely a whisper, a rustle of leaves in the cavernous, silent room. Clear's throat. "You're wrong," she breathed. The silence in the penthouse suite was no longer just tense. It was absolute. It was the compressed, vacuum-sealed silence of a tomb. Every person in the room, the Sheikh, his security detail, the analysts, and Gregory Prescott, all turned as one toward the source of the sound. Dina's hand flew to her mouth as if she could physically catch the words and stuff them back in. Her face flooded with heat. She had broken the primary rule. Don't speak. Don't be seen. Don't exist. Mr. Davies, who had been lurking by the service door, looked as though he'd been shot. "Jensen," he hissed, his face a mask of pure terror. Get out now." Prescott was the first to recover. He let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Well, it seems the catering staff has an opinion." He turned to the Sheikh, a smug, dismissive smile on his face. "Your Excellency, my deepest apologies for this unprofessional interruption. As I was saying, a hostile bid. Stop." The word was not loud, but it had the density of a black hole. It came from Sheikh-colored Oljile. He wasn't looking at Prescott. He was really looking at Dana for the first time. His dark eyes were not angry. They were intensely, terrifyingly curious. "You," he said, pointing a single steady finger at her. "The waitress? What did you say?" Dana's throat was dry. She felt the eyes of every person in the room on her, not as a polite dismissal, but as a series of hot, focused lasers. Mr. Davies was making frantic, cuted-out gestures from the doorway. "I apologize, sir," Dina stammered, her gaze dropping to the floor. "I spoke out of turn. It won't happen again." "I did not ask for an apology," the Sheikh said, his voice dangerously soft. "I asked what you said." Dana swallowed. This was it. The end of her job. The end of the only thing keeping her from total destitution. She could lie, say she'd just coughed, and flee the room. Or she lifted her chin, the smallest, most fractional movement. She looked past Prescott, past the analysts, and directly at the Sheikh. "I said, 'He's wrong,'" she repeated, her voice clearer this time, though it still shook. "Mr. Prescott, he's misinterpreting the puzzle completely." Prescott's face, which had been amused, instantly turned a dark, mottled red. "How dare you, Your Excellency? This is preposterous. This woman is a menial laborer. She is cleaning the dishes. What could she possibly know?" "That is an excellent question," the Sheikh mused, steepling his fingers. "What could you possibly know? Please enlighten us. What is Mr. Prescott, my $10,000 a day consultant, wrong about?" The invitation was a snare, a trap, a humiliation ritual, but it was also an open door. Dana put her silver tray down on the service bar. The small clink of metal on marble sounded like a gunshot. She took a step into the room out of the shadows. "He's wrong about the 6 rivers," Dana said, her voice gaining strength as the academic part of her brain took over, pushing the terrified waitress aside. "He thinks they're distribution hubs. They're not. The text says they meet the salt and bloom with thought." It's a classical illusion. He's referencing the 6 primary schools of Hellenistic philosophy. The Platonists, the Peripatetics, the Stoics, the Epicureans, the Skeptics, and the Cynics. The salt isn't the ocean, it's eza as in salientia. The salt of wisdom clears throat. The analysts stared, their mouths slightly open. Prescott's smugness was rapidly curdling into disbelief. "And the desert," Dana continued, her confidence growing, blooming with thought. "This isn't a new market. Leland Shaw is making a direct historical reference to the Beit al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom in 9th century Baghdad. It was a center of learning, a library that sprung from the desert of intellectual curiosity. It's the most famous example of a private entity fostering global knowledge." Sheikh Khalid's expression was unreadable. He simply listened. "And finally," Dana said, turning to the last stanza on the screen, "Mr. Prescott believes the vessel is the intellectual property. He's reading it like a lawyer. He should be reading it like a historian. The caravan seeks the oasis for temporary relief. The wise man seeks the vessel, the container for the knowledge itself, the library, the school, the foundation." She took a deep breath and delivered the final devastating conclusion. "Your Excellency, Leland Shaw, isn't asking you to buy his technology. He's not negotiating supply chains. He's testing you. He's a reclusive genius who knows his encryption will change the world, and he's terrified it will be used purely for profit. He's asking for a partner who will use that power to build a legacy. He doesn't want a data center. He wants you to co-fund a new global digital house of wisdom, a non-profit foundation dedicated to open-source knowledge, funded by the profits of your new data network. The puzzle, it's the mission statement. It's the charter." The room was so quiet, Dana could hear the hum of the air conditioner. Sheikh Khalid stared at the screen, then at Dana. A slow, dangerous smile spread across his face. It was the smile of a man who had just found a priceless diamond in a bucket of gravel. "My word," he whispered. Prescott, seeing his entire multi-million-dollar contract evaporating before his eyes, finally exploded. "This is insane. She's making it up. It's gibberish. Your Excellency, are you truly going to listen to this? This nobody? This waitress?" He strode toward Dana, his finger jabbing at her. "Who the hell do you think you are coming in here with your community college philosophy? You're fired. Davis, get her out of my sight. She is not your employee, Mr. Prescott," the Sheikh said, his voice like ice. "She is the employee of the hotel I am paying for, and she is, at present, the only person in this room who has offered me a single viable idea." The Sheikh turned his full attention back to Dana. "You your name?" Clear's throat. "Dana Jensen, sir," she said, her hands clasped tightly behind her back. "Dana Jensen," he repeated, tasting the name. "You speak with the confidence of an academic, not a waitress." Prescott, who had been staring at Dana's face, trying to place the familiarity of her voice, suddenly went pale. The color drained from his face, leaving a sickly greenish tint. "Jensen," he whispered, his eyes wide with a dawning, abject horror. "Dana! Jensen! Dr. Jensen!" Dana locked eyes with the man who had destroyed her, the man who hadn't even recognized her. "Hello, Gregory," she said, her voice perfectly level. "It's been a long time." The name Dr. Jensen hung in the air, thick and heavy with implication. The analysts from the accounting firm looked back and forth between Dinah and Prescott, their expressions shifting from confusion to the dawning, delicious thrill of corporate drama. Sheikh Khalid raised an eyebrow. He leaned back in his chair, a spectator who had just discovered he was at the center of a much more interesting play. "Dr. Jensen," the Sheikh repeated, a note of amusement in his voice. "Mr. Prescott, you two are acquainted. You did not mention your associate was on the hotel staff. A very hands-on approach to consulting." Prescott's blood ran cold. He had built his entire career, his entire life, on the ashes of this woman's genius. And here she was in a $20 polyester uniform, dismantling his multi-million-dollar deal with the same intellect he had stolen. "Your Excellency, this is a misunderstanding," Prescott stammered, holding his hands up high. "This woman, she's unstable. She was a disgruntled former student of mine. She has a history of this, of obsessive behavior. She was dismissed from her doctoral program for academic fraud. It was a bold lie, a nuclear option. He was trying to discredit her, to destroy her a second time." Dana felt the old familiar sting of tears, the hot rush of injustice. The first time he'd done this, she had crumbled. She had hidden. She had run. Now, standing in the sterling penthouse with nothing left to lose but a job she despised, she found she had no more fear left. "That's a lie," Dana said, her voice clear and carrying. "I was not his student. He was my colleague, and I was not dismissed for fraud. I was pushed out after he stole my doctoral thesis, Symbols of Trust, Merchant Codes, and the Semiotics of Pre-Currency Trade, and published it under his own name." Prescott laughed, a high-pitched, brittle sound. "This is absurd." "She has no proof." "Don't you?" Dana countered. "The original draft, the one you lost, it's still on a hard drive in my storage unit. The one with the original time-stamped metadata from 2019. Your paper, the one that won you the Kellerman Grant and launched Prescott Strategic Solutions, was published in 2021. You stole my work, Gregory. You stole my life. And you were so arrogant, you didn't even bother to change the core thesis. You just translated my chapter on the Beit al-Hikmah from German to English and called it your own insight. Every word was a hammer blow. Prescott was ashen. The Sheikh watched this exchange with the placid focus of a leopard. He held up one hand. The room fell silent again. "Fascinating," the Sheikh said. He turned to his head of security, a large, silent man standing by the door. "Mr. Kettler, please take Mr. Prescott's phone and tablet and get my personal legal team on the line. I want a full background investigation on both Dr. Diver Jensen and Mr. Gregory Prescott, focused on a 2019 symposium at the University of Berlin and a 2021 paper titled Symbols of Trust. I want it in 5 minutes. Clear's throat. "Yes, Your Excellency," Kettler said, already moving. "You can't do that," Prescott shrieked, clutching his tablet. "That is private property, confidential." Kettler, without a word, simply plucked the tablet from Prescott's hands. Prescott flinched back, small and defeated. The Sheikh turned his gaze back to Dina. The amusement was gone. His eyes were all business. "Dr. Jensen," he said, "you have presented an interesting theory. I am inclined to believe it. But it is not enough." "Sir," Dina asked, her heart sinking, "you have decoded the what. You haven't given me the how. If I contact Leland Shaw and say, 'I will build you a library,' he will laugh and hang up. This puzzle," he gestured to the screen, "is not just a statement of intent. You called it a charter, a blueprint. Prove it. Solve the rest." What is the business model? How does he expect this foundation to work? He was testing her again, pushing her past the abstract and into the practical. Dana walked closer to the screen, her mind humming. She looked at the other stanzas, the ones she hadn't yet decoded. The scales of justice must weigh the wind. She read aloud. That's not about law, it's about data. The wind is information unstructured, chaotic. The scales are the algorithm. He's saying the core encryption, his quantum technology, must be the arbiter. It must be used to weigh, to analyze and structure all the data the Foundation takes in. She pointed to another line. The scholar's coin pays for the merchant's bread. That's the financial structure. It's a symbiotic loop. The merchant, your for-profit sovereign data network, pays for the scholar's bread, the Foundation's operating costs. A percentage of all profits from the commercial venture must be permanently and legally diverted to fund the non-profit. She walked the Sheikh and his stunned team through the entire text. It was all there. The governance structure, a board balanced between commercial and academic interests. The scope, open source access for universities and NOS, and the failaf, if the commercial merchant arm ever defaults, the scholar's encryption key, the core IP, is released to the public domain, rendering the entire network worthless. It was not a poem. It was the most elegant ironclad contract she had ever seen. When she finished, the room was silent. The analysts were furiously typing, running models based on her interpretation. One of them looked up, his face pale with awe. Sir, it works. The financial model. It's perfect. The Foundation creates goodwill and academic partnerships, which in turn feeds the commercial network with new talent and stress testing. The profits fund the research. It's a closed-loop, self-perpetuating system. It's beautiful. Just then, Mr. Kettler, the security chief, stepped forward and quietly placed a phone in front of the Sheikh. The Sheikh listened for a moment, his face impassive. He grunted a thank you and hung up. He looked at Prescott. My legal team has confirmed it, the Sheikh said, his voice terrifyingly calm. The University of Berlin Symposium 2019, a Dr. Dina Jensen presented. The publication dates, the grant, it all lines up. You are a fraud, Mr. Prescott, a common, pathetic thief. Prescott slid into his chair, a broken man. Please, Your Excellency. You are finished, the Sheikh stated. It was not a threat. It was a simple statement of fact. You came into my hotel, you took my money, and you tried to pass off another's genius as your own. Clear his throat. And in doing so, you nearly cost me the single most important deal of my life. He nodded to Kettler. Escort Mr. Prescott from the premises. He is to be billed for his own stay, and his firm is to be blacklisted from all old Alge holdings and subsidiaries effective immediately. My legal team will handle the rest. No, Prescott cried as Kettler and another guard hoisted him from his chair. You can't. I'll be ruined. You were already ruined, Gregory, Dana said quietly, watching him being dragged toward the door. You just built your house on stolen land. As he was pulled from the room, Prescott's eyes met Dees. They held no remorse, only a deep, burning, impotent hatred. The door closed and he was gone. The room was silent. Mr. Davies was trying to blend into the wallpaper. The analysts were pretending to be fascinated by their spreadsheets. It was just Dana and the Sheikh. He looked at her, the woman in the ill-fitting uniform, the clear's throat, ghost who had just saved a kingdom. Well, Dr. Jensen, Sheikh Khalid said, standing up. It seems I am in need of a new consultant, and you are in need of a new job. The tension had been sucked out of the room, replaced by a strange humming vacuum. The immediate threat, Prescott, was gone. The puzzle was solved. Dana stood in the center of the penthouse, her hands clasped, feeling the adrenaline begin to drain away, leaving a bone-deep weariness in its wake. Mr. Davies, seeing an opportunity to re-establish order, skewed forward. "Dr. Jensen. Miss Mum, perhaps you'd like to step out. I can have someone bring you a water, a coffee." He was treating her like a fragile, unexploded bomb. Dana gave him a small, tired smile. "I'm still on the clock, Mr. Davies. I should probably clear these cups." "Absolutely not." The Sheikh boomed, and Davies flinched. Khalid walked over to the service bar, and to the utter shock of Mr. Davies poured 2 glasses of the expensive Norwegian water himself. He walked over and handed one to Dana. Her hand, which had been so steady while dismantling the puzzle, was shaking now. She took the glass. "Dr. Jensen," the Sheikh began, his tone no longer that of an employer to an employee, but of an equal. "What you did here, it was not just clever. It was profound. You did not just see the words. You understood the intent. In my world, that is the rarest skill. It is, in fact, the only skill that matters." He paced for a moment, gathering his thoughts. Gregory Prescott was the head of my strategic advisory team. He was paid an obscene amount of money to see around corners. He failed. You, on the other hand, saw a path that none of my other highly paid experts could even imagine. He stopped and faced her directly. "Alger Global Holdings has a vacancy effective immediately. I want you to head my new strategic development arm for this project. Not as a consultant, as a director. You will answer directly to me. You will have an unlimited research budget. You will run the entire negotiation with Leland Shaw. The salary," he named a figure that made Dana's knees buckle, "is non-negotiable, and it is 10 times what that fraud Prescott was earning." Mr. Davies made a small gasping sound, like a dying bird. The analysts who had been privy to the offer looked at Dana with a mixture of awe and raw, undisguised envy. This was it. The fairy tale ending. The moment the princess is rescued from the kitchen and given the keys to the kingdom. From a $38 bank balance to a 7-figure salary. From invisible to indispensable. Davina looked at the Sheikh, this powerful man who was offering her the world on a silver platter. She should have been weeping with gratitude. She should have been falling at his feet. Instead, she felt a sudden, strange coldness. She thought about the last 5 years, the humiliation, the nights she cried herself to sleep. Not from poverty, but from the feeling of waste, the injustice of her name being dragged through the mud while his shone in the lights. This job, it was incredible. It was a lifeline. But it was also another man's world. It was his company, his project. It was a golden cage, and she would still be, in effect, working for him. She put the water glass down. "No," she said. The silence that followed this single word was more profound than any that had come before. The Sheikh's generous, open expression froze. "I beg your pardon?" he asked, his voice losing its warmth. "No, thank you, Your Excellency," Dana said, forcing herself to meet his gaze. Her heart was hammering, but her voice was steady. She was terrified of him, but she was more terrified of losing herself again just when she'd found her footing. "It is an incredible, generous offer," she continued. "But I don't want Mr. Prescott's job. I don't want to be a director in your company. I don't want to be your new consultant." "What then?" the Sheikh demanded, his patience clearly wearing thin. "A higher sum, a finder's fee. Name your price, Dr. Jensen, but do not play games with me." "I don't want your money," Dana said. "I want my life back." She took a deep breath. "You are a man of influence, Your Excellency. You just proved that. You ruined Gregory Prescott in 5 minutes. He ruined me over 5 years. I don't want a salary. I want my reputation. I want my name cleared. I want the Kellerman grant revoked from him and awarded to me its rightful owner. I want every academic journal that published his stolen work to print a full-page retraction and an apology. I want the University of Berlin to formally reopen my case and issue a public statement clearing my name and censuring him. She looked him in the eye. You offered me a job, but I am offering you a partnership. You want the Leland Shaw deal? You need me to build that foundation, not as your employee, but as its co-founder. I will run the House of Wisdom as its own independent entity. You and Mr. Shaw can fund it, but I will lead it. As Dr. Dinah Jensen, this was the true gamble. She wasn't just solving his puzzle. She was adding her own terms. She was no longer the waitress, the furniture. She was a player at the table. For a long, agonizing moment, Sheikh Khalid simply stared at her. He was a man who bought companies, islands, and politicians. He was not a man who was negotiated with, especially not by someone who 10 minutes ago was serving him coffee. He could crush her. He could have her thrown out, hire one of the analysts who had listened to her solution, and cut her out completely. He could. But he was also the man who had recognized the Philosopher King test in Shaw's riddle. A slow smile, entirely different from his earlier ones, this one full of genuine, profound respect, spread across his face. He let out a short, sharp laugh, a laugh of pure delight. Dr. Jensen, he said, you are without a doubt the most terrifying person I have ever met. He extended his hand. Your terms are aggressive, they are audacious, and they are accepted. Dana looked at his outstretched hand. There is one more thing, she said. The Sheikh raised an eyebrow, his smile not fading. Impossible. What else? I want his watch, Dana said, pointing not at the Sheikh's part, Felipe, but at the service table where Mr. Kettler had deposited Prescott's personal effects before removing him. Clear's throat. His watch, the Sheikh asked, bewildered. It's a Breitling Navit timer, Dana said. He bought it with the first installment of the Kellerman grant. He bought it with my money. I want it. Sheikh stared at her for a beat, then burst out laughing. Mr. Davies, bag the watch for Dr. Jensen. It seems she has just collected her first dividend. Dana finally allowed herself to smile. She took the Sheikh's hand and shook it, not as a servant, but as the partner she had just declared herself to be. The next 48 hours were a blur. Dana Jensen did not go back to the service kitchen. She did not polish another glass. Mr. Davis, now her differential shadow, arranged for her meager belongings to be retrieved from her locker and her apartment. She was moved from the staff quarters in the hotel's sub to a St. James suite, 2 floors below the penthouse. The first call was to Leland Shaw. It was a video conference. Dana sat at the head of the massive oak table where she had once cleared cups. Sheikh Khalid sat to her right as her partner, not her boss. Shaw's face appeared on the screen. He was an older man with a wild beard and eyes that seemed to see everything. Your Excellency, Shaw grunted, your time is up. Do you have an answer for me? Or are we finished? Mr. Shaw, the Sheikh said, I have an answer, but it is not my answer. I will defer to my partner and the new CEO of the project you proposed. Dr. Dinah Jensen, he gestured to Dinah. Shaw's piercing eyes zeroed in on her. Dr. Jensen? I don't know that name. You will, Dana said simply. She then spent the next hour without notes, walking Leland Shaw through his own poem. She didn't just recite her solution, she expanded on it. She discussed the architectural influences of the Beit al-Hikmah. She proposed a digital infrastructure based on the Alexandrian Library's Pinnock catalogue. She talked about a vessel of knowledge that was not just a database, but a living, growing entity. When she finished, the reclusive billionaire was silent for a full minute. "The scales of justice must weigh the wind," Shaw quoted, his voice thick with emotion. "The algorithm must be the arbiter of the data, weighted for truthfulness, not popularity." Dana replied instantly. Shaw nodded, a tear tracking down his cheek into his beard. "I have waited 30 years for someone to say that back to me. 30 years of being surrounded by merchants and fools." He looked at the Sheikh. You found her." "Where?" The Sheikh smiled. "She was serving me water." "Leland." Shaw let out a bark of laughter. "Of course she was. The world always hides its greatest treasures in plain sight. Dr. Jensen, welcome. Let's get to work." The deal was done. While Dana and Shaw's teams began hammering out the details of the foundation, Sheikh Khalid's legal and media teams unleashed a parallel storm. It was not a quiet retraction. It was a global detonation. Prescott Strategic Solutions CEO accused of widespread academic fraud. The headlines hit the Financial Times and the Wall Street Journal simultaneously. Alja Global Holdings, as a victim of this fraud, released a scathing statement. The University of Berlin, under threat of a massive lawsuit from the Sheikh, expedited their review. Within 24 hours, the truth was undeniable. Gregory Prescott was not just blacklisted, he was obliterated. His partners abandoned him. His clients fled. The Kellerman grant was publicly and humiliatingly revoked. He was a pariah, a footnote, a ghost. And on the same day, a separate, more positive announcement was made: the formation of the Al-Jam Shaw Institute for Digital Humanities, the House of Wisdom Project. It was announced with an initial endowment of $20 billion. The new institute's founding CEO and president, Dr. Dina Jensen. The academic world, which had shunned her, was now falling over itself to congratulate her. Professors who had crossed the street to avoid her were suddenly flooding her inbox, calling her a visionary, a maverick, a genius they had always believed in. Dana read their emails one by one in her new office. She then created a special folder for them. She labeled it Furniture. She found the Breitling watch, which Kettler had indeed bagged for her at the bottom of her new Bautke Veneta briefcase. She looked at it, a gaudy, complex thing, a monument to a thief's arrogance. She didn't want it. It wasn't a trophy. It was a reminder. She walked down to the hotel's ground floor to the staff cantina. Paul, the waiter who had been in the penthouse with her, was on his break, eating a sandwich. "Paul," she said. He shot up from his chair. "Dr. Jensen. Mum, I didn't see you." "Hi, Paul. I just wanted to say thank you. You were always kind to me when I was new." Paul blushed. "You were a good worker, Dana. Mum." "Dana," Clear's throat, "is fine." She smiled. She placed the Breitling on the table. "My academic career was stolen by the man who owned this. I just got my career back. So, this is just a watch. A very expensive one." Clear's throat. "I believe your son is graduating college soon. Consider it a gift for being decent." Paul stared at the watch, worth 2 years of his salary, and then at Dana, his eyes wide with disbelief. I can't, Mum." "Please it would," Dana said, thinking of Prescott. "Do me a great service." She left him there, staring at the watch, and walked out of the hotel service entrance for the last time. She was no longer a ghost. She was the architect. 6 months later, the Grand Corinthian Hotel was once again unrecognizable. The cavernous atrium, which had always felt like a cold monument to old money, was now therming with a different kind of energy. The air, which Dana remembered smelling of industrial polish and faint anxiety, was now filled with the sound of a string quartet, the clinking of champagne flutes, and the vibrant, intelligent hum of 1,000 conversations. The hotel had been rented out entirely for the inaugural gala of the Al Shaw Institute for Digital Humanities. The guest list was a staggering testament to what she had built. Nobel laureates in physics chatted animatedly with historians. Tech CEOs, the new titans of the world, listened intently to university presidents and linguistic scholars. It was a room filled with the very merchants and scholars Leland Shaw's puzzle had described. And tonight, they were all in one place. At the center of it all, on a raised dais, stood Dinah Jensen. She was not the shivering, invisible ghost in a polyester uniform. She was not the avenging, angry academic from the penthouse. She was simply and finally herself. She wore an elegant, simple gown of deep midnight blue, the color of a clear, infinite sky. Her hair, once pulled back in a severe, functional bun, was cut in a sharp, professional style that framed a face that was no longer haunted, but calm and assured. She looked out at the sea of faces, hundreds of them, all clear as throat, focused, respectfully, eagerly on her. She remembered with a sudden sharp clarity the feeling of being in a room like this and praying that no one would see her. Now her greatest power was in being seen. She tapped the microphone, and the vast room fell into a respectful hush. "Good evening," she said. Her voice, amplified, was the same one that had whispered, "You're wrong." But it was no longer strained. It was a voice of command. "The Baal Hikmah," she began. The original House of Wisdom in 9th century Baghdad was not just a building. It was an idea. It was a radical, dangerous idea that knowledge is not a commodity to be hoarded, but a public good, a light. It was an idea that brought together scholars from every faith, every language, and every corner of the known world, not just to agree, but to argue, to translate, to discover. She smiled, a genuine, warm expression that lit up her face. In our modern world, we have more data than ever before in human history. We have an ocean of information, but we have perhaps less wisdom. We are surrounded by merchants who sell our data and caravans that seek only the fleeting oasis of quarterly profits. The reference was not lost on the two men standing in the wings, Sheikh Khalid Al-Jaleh and Leland Shaw, both watching her side by side. "The Al-Jaleh Shaw Institute," Dana continued. "Our new digital house of wisdom is here to do what they did 1,000 years ago. We are here to seek the vessel. We are here to build a light, not for one nation or one company or one ideology, but for everyone." The room erupted in a wave of thunderous applause. It was a sound so different from the clatter of plates. It was the sound of validation, of ideas taking root, of a future being born. Dana placed a hand on her heart, accepting it not with arrogance, but with a quiet, centered gratitude. In the wings, Leland Shaw, who had flown in for the event, shook his head in wonder. "She's a titan," he murmured, watching Dana step down from the dais to be immediately surrounded by admirers. "She is not a titan," Sheikh Khalid corrected him, a rare, genuine smile on his face. He watched her navigate the crowd, not with the artificial charm of a CEO, but with the focused, incisive questions of a true academic. "She is a philosopher king, and we, my friend, are just the bankers." Later that evening, Dinah found a moment of quiet. She stepped out onto the wide terrace, the same one attached to the Sterling penthouse, though she had entered from the main hall. The cold November air felt good, a sharp contrast to the warmth of the gala. She walked to the marble balustrade, the one she had probably polished, and looked out over the city lights. This was the view from the top. It was beautiful. But she wasn't thinking of the power or the money. She was thinking for the first time in 6 years that her mind was quiet, the constant grinding hum of injustice, of waste, of anger. It was finally gone. "Dr. Jensen," she turned. It was Mr. Davies. He stood in the doorway, his posture hesitant, a world away from the vibrating martinet who had once snapped at her. He was holding a glass of water, as if by instinct. "Ah, a magnificent evening, Doctor," he said, his voice strained. Truly the speech, it was breathtaking. "Thank you, Mr. Davis," Dina said, turning to him. Her expression was not cold, but it was not familiar. It was polite, professional. "The catering is superb. The staff has been flawless as always. You should be very proud." Davies looked stunned by the compliment, as if he'd been braced for a blow. He took a halting step forward, his guilt palpable. "Thank you, Doctor. I wanted to say." He swallowed, his eyes dropping to the floor about that day in the penthouse. I am so profoundly sorry for how I treated you, for how I didn't see you." Idana held up a hand, silencing him gently. He flinched, but she simply shook her head. "You treated me exactly as I was meant to be treated, Mr. Davies," she said, her voice without malice. "You saw a waitress. That's what I was. You were just doing your job." "But I should have known," he insisted, his shame making him desperate. "A person of your caliber." Idana looked away from him back, clear's throat, at the city. "The world is full of people with caliber cleaning toilets. Mr. Davies, it's full of geniuses driving taxis and artists washing dishes. It's full of brilliant minds, silenced by circumstance, by theft, by people who are just too busy to look." She turned back to him, her gaze direct, but not unkind. It was the look of a teacher, a leader. Everyone is invisible until they're not. Don't apologize for not seeing me. Just try to remember that. The next time you look at the furniture, you never know who you're really talking to. Mr. Davies stood humbled and silent, the water still in his hand. Dana gave him a polite, final nod. It was a dismissal, but a kind one. She was finished with the past. She left him on the cold terrace and walked back into the gala. She walked back into the warmth, back into the sound of laughter and debate, back into the bright, golden light of the future she had built from nothing. She was no longer the waitress everyone ignored. She was the architect. She was the woman who had solved the puzzle, and in doing so had shown them all how to build a better world. And that is the power of being underestimated. Dana's story proves that the person you ignore, the one you dismiss as a nobody, might just be the only one in the room with the answer. They didn't see her as a threat, and that became her greatest weapon. What did you think of Dina's ultimate power move? Was it reclaiming her name, or was it refusing the job and making her own? Clear's throat. Let me know your favorite part in the comments below. If you loved this story of a brilliant mind getting the ultimate revenge, please hit that like button. It truly helps the channel. And if you're new here, Clear's throat, make sure you subscribe and ring that bell. We post new dramatic stories every single week, and you don't want to miss what happens next.